Good day, everyone. Today we are going to discuss all about the topics under mathematics of finance. Basically, we're done with the topics under mathematics as a tool. Thus, we are going to move on now to the next chapter, which is mathematics of finance. So, the first topic that I'm going to discuss is all about simple interest and simple discount. So, first, we are going to deal with simple interest, and then before we go through the formula that we are going to use to calculate for the simple interest, let me go first to the file we're in. We are going to define the terms under simple interest. So basically, the purpose of defining the terms is in order for us to familiarize with the terms that we are going to encounter when we are calculating for the simple interest. So the first term that I'm going to introduce to you is all about the debtor or maker. Ano po yung debtor or maker? So it's an individual or institution that borrows money for any purpose. So basically, it's understandable naman sa ating definition. It's an individual or institution that borrows money for any purpose. So siya yung maghihiram ng money sa ating individual or institution. So ano naman itong individual or institution na mag-aalaw sa debtor or maker na mag-borrow or manghiram ng money? So, yung tawag doon is yung ating lender. So, yung lender natin is an individual or institution which loans the money. And then, if there is an agreement between our debtor or maker or the lender, there is a value that we can calculate from this if the debtor will borrow money from our lender. And that is what you call our interest. So, if we define now our interest, this is going to be the payment for the use of borrowed money or the amount earned on invested money. So if we are going to stick with the definition ng ating debtor or lender, which would be yung debtor natin would be the one that borrows money, and then our lender is the one who would let the debtor loan the money, then it's going to be the payment for the use of borrowed money. But if we go to the next phrase right here, which states that the amount earned on invested money, then it would be a different case now. So, this is actually a misconception. Pwede ding maging amount earned on invested money yung interest natin. For an example, yung mga banks natin would allow us or an individual to invest money to them. So, yung value na tutubo doon sa invested money natin, depending on the time and rate, is what you call still an interest. So, that is still an interest. Kasi yung iba, sasabihin, hindi yon interest now because they only think that interest is all about borrowing money. So, hindi po yon yung case. It could also be the amount earned on invested money. And anyways, yung ating interest is denoted by the variable I or the capital letter I. And also under calculating interest, we could also encounter this term which is the principal. So ano now yung principal natin? Yung principal is the capital or sum of money borrowed or invested. So yung principal natin is the initial amount of money that we borrow or the initial amount of money that we invested to the institution. Okay? And this is going to be denoted by the capital letter P. And aside from that, when we are trying to calculate for the interest, we could also use yung ating rate of interest. Ano now yung ating rate of interest? So yung rate of interest natin is a fractional part of the principal that is paid on the loan or investment, and which is usually expressed as percent. So again, it's just a fractional or parte ng ating principal that is paid on the loan or investment. And you can actually determine this rate of interest because yung SI unit na ginagamit niya is in percentage form. And this is denoted by the variable R or the lowercase r. So, yung ating rate of interest again is another as an additional knowledge, hindi pwedeng yung rate of interest natin is used as in percentage form. So if we are going to use the rate of interest now in our formula later on for our interest, we are going to express it in decimal muna. Okay? Anyways, another term that we are going to encounter is going to be the time. So, yung time natin madali lang intindihan kasi that's just the number of years for which the money is borrowed or invested. And it's going to be expressed in T. So, let me erase this one because that's incorrect. I'm sorry about that one. So, yung ating time is expressed in or denoted in T. So, lowercase t. So, that's the number of years. So, yung default natin na SI unit for time is in years. So if it's not expressed in years, and the problem, we have to express it in years or convert it in years. Unless stated in the problem to express yung ating time in another SI unit sa time. Or for an example, in the problem, it was stated na kailangan naka months, weeks, or days siya. But for a case wherein we are trying to calculate it for our interest, it's always going to be in years. Okay? And then the last term that I'm going to introduce to you under interest is going to be the final amount or maturity value. So yung final amount or maturity value is the sum composed of the principal and the interest accumulated over a certain period. And this is denoted by the capital letter M. So basically, meron na tayong interest which is going to be the tubo. Kung sa Tagalog siya ay tubo dun sa ating hiniram na money. Then it would be added it would be added with our principal. Now that accumulated value or that sum would be now our final amount or maturity value. So that's why it's called maturity value, because that's going to be the value that we end up with. So sometimes it's not going to be called final amount or maturity value on some of the books or some of resources that we are going to use under math of finance. It's sometimes called future value kasi nga siya yung value that you are going to end up with after you get the interest from that specific borrowed or invested money under that rate of interest and time. Okay? So these are the terms that we are going to encounter when we are calculating for simple interest. Now, if we move on to the next slide, we have now yung ating formula that we are going to use to compute for the interest. So, madali lang naman i-calculate yung simple interest. So, we are just going to use this formula, which is I is equal to PRT. So, alam naman natin kung ano na yung use ng mga variables na to. We know that I here is a simple interest as defined kanina. And then P here, excuse me, is the principal invested. R here is the rate of interest. And again, please take note of this. Yung rate of interest is going, if you are going to use it in the formula, please do not use yung ating percentage form. Please convert it to its decimal equivalent muna. And then yung T is the time expressed in years. So yan yung default na SI unit na kailangan naka-years siya. So that is just I is equal to PRT when we are calculating for the simple interest. And also, again, we could equate yung ating formula. Any formula can be equated in order to find any variable under that formula or any value that we want from the formula. So if we are going to calculate for the P here, we could equate for P, we could, or for the principal, we could try to make use yung ating formula for interest, which is I is equal to PRT. And then if we wanna find for the principal or the P, we could just divide the equation with RT on both sides. And then as you can see, ma-isolate natin si P, therefore telling us that we could find yung ating principal by using the formula na P is equal to I divided by RT. And then if we are going to calculate for R, which is the rate of interest, we could also make use of our formula and then do the same thing as what I did dun sa ating principal. We could do algebraic manipulation in order to isolate yung ating R, which is the value that we are looking for. So if we do that, we are going to divide both sides with PT. So if we do that, now we isolate R, which is the equated formula from the formula, yung yung original formula for interest. So R is equal to I divided by PT if we are going to find for the rate of interest. And then we have for time. So if you are looking for the time, then we could equate it as well. And then we are going to make use ng ating formula, which is I is equal to PRT. And then we could just divide both sides then with PR. So if we divide both sides with PR, we would isolate T. So T is equal to I divided by PR, which is the formula for uh, which is the formula that we could use to find the time during sa ating case wherein we are trying to find for the interest. So these are the equated formulas that we could use, but we could also do direct substitution on our formula, and then pwede namang hindi i-use ito. We could just directly use yung ating formula and then do algebraic manipulation and then simplify the value, then you could still find yung ating any value dun sa ating um, formula, which is going to be either I, P, or R, or T. Okay? So that's what is explained here in the ng ating slide. So to find the principal P when interest I, time, and rate are given or R are given, we could use P is equal to I divided by RT, which is the equated formula, to find time when principal P, interest I, and R rate are given. Then we could use T is equal to I divided by PR. And then if you are finding the rate, when principal P, interest I, and time are given, you could use R is equal to I divided by PT. So you could try to manipulate yung ating formula into which variable we want to find for. And then aside from that, this is very important, yung we could also have a formula to find the final amount or maturity value. Again, from the definition, yung ating final amount or maturity value or the future value denoted by F is going to be the sum of the principal and the interest accumulated over time. So if we are going to make use of the variables used for principal, that's going to be P plus our interest. So that would make up our final amount or future values. Therefore, F is equal to P plus I. So we could use that if you have the principal and then you have the interest, you could directly find yung ating final amount or maturity value. But aside from that, if we are given our principal, rate, and time, we could also make use of these alternative formula. But these alternative formula, as you can see, is just coming from our A na formula, which is F is equal to P plus I. In-expand lang natin siya. We know that I here is PRT, so therefore F here is going to be equal to P plus PRT. So if we try to factor out P here, then F is equal to P times 1 plus RT, which is an alternative formula that we could use if we are trying to find the final amount or maturity value. So basically sometimes mas madali na gamitin si alternative formula kasi we don't wanna calculate for I alone. We would just wanna directly use which is given, which is the principal, the rate, and time in the problem. But anyways, you'll see that when we have an example for that one. So let's try to go now to the next slide. Wherein sa next slide natin, we are going to make use of the formula for interest. So let's say yung example natin is ganito under interest. The problem is find the interest paid by Miss Rose on 15,000. This is 15,000, though it looks like a dot. It's 15,000 for that case, 15,000 that she borrowed for 3 years at 6% simple interest. So in any word problem class, it's I advise that we do this problem solving flow. So yung ginagawa first is we try to understand the problem. Next is identify which is given or which is known in the problem. And then the next thing is try to identify what is required in the problem. Next is try to find a formula that we could use uh, based on the given and the required values under that problem, and then do now the computations based on the formula, and then do our conclusion, which is actually answering the problem based on the computed value that we arrived. Okay, so if we are going to do that process, we are going to identify first the given. So ano yung pinakaunang given sa problem? So we have here yung value na 15,000. So yung gagawin mo lang sa word problem is of course understand what is happening doon sa problem. As you can see, this is yung 15,000 is the money borrowed by Miss Rose, as said by the problem. Find the interest paid by Miss Rose on 15,000 that she borrowed. So basically, yung 15,000 here is the amount borrowed. And then if we try to go back to the definition of terms, yung amount borrowed on or invested is basically our P, which is our principal. So therefore, 15,000 here is our principal or P. And then, if we move on to the next value that we could identify on the problem, that is 3 years. So, alam naman natin na yung SI unit na years is for time based on the definition, right? So therefore, automatically, this is going to be our time. And then if we check, is 3 years the default, is years is the default SI unit for time when calculating for interest? Yes, so therefore we could use these values automatically for our formula. And then next, what are the other values that we have? We have the 6%. So yung naka-percentage form lang na SI unit is our rate of interest. So therefore, automatically, this is going to be our R. So the given values are P is equal to 15,000, T is equal to 3 years, R is equal to 6%. And then, what is required on the problem? Sabi dito, find the interest. So therefore, we are finding for the value of I. Okay? And then, of course, if we are going to find the value of I, the formula that we are going to use is going to be I is equal to PRT, because that's a formula that we are going to arrive automatically doon sa ating I, which is the interest. And then, let's try to check kung yung 6% is the value that we are automatically going to use on the problem. So, naka 6% pa siya. So, these values should be also converted. I almost forgot about that one. Remember, yung percentage form is not acceptable. Dun sa ating formula, you have to convert it into decimal form. To convert it, I assume alam na natin to because that was discussed in mathematical language. So kung magka-convert tayo sa decimal form ng ating percentage form, what we are just going to do is just divide our value to 100. With 100, I mean. So if you have 6, it would be 6 divided by 100, and if we do 6 divided by 100, obviously this is 0.06. So ito yung value na ipakapag-in nun natin sa ating formula. So if we do that, for the computation now, I is equal to 15,000 times 0.06 times 3. So let me confirm that one, no, sa calculator first. Is that really going to get uh, zero, 2,700. So let's try to do 15,000. We could do 15,000 and next times um, 0.06 times 3. So as you can see, it's 2,700. So therefore, the computed value now is going to be 2,700 pesos. At tapos, ano tong 2,700 pesos? Yung 2,700 pesos obviously is our interest. So, if we are going to answer the problem for a conclusion, that will be therefore, the interest paid by Miss Rose is 2,700 pesos. So, if Miss Rose is going to borrow 15,000 for 3 years at 6% 6% simple interest, then she has to pay 2,700 for that. Okay? So, ganun lang i-apply yung formula natin sa simple interest. Napakadali lamang. And then, We still have a lot of examples right here. If finish lang natin lahat ng examples that we have right here para mas alam nating i-use yung ating formula. So, let's say another problem states that determine the simple interest to be paid by Anna if she borrowed 1,600 at 6 and 1/4% for 7 months. So, again, yung flow natin is identifying first the given. So, let me write down given. So, that's the value that we are going to look into doon sa ating problem. So, ano tong first value that we have right here? So, we have here 1,600 pesos. So, ano yung 1,600 pesos? Based on the context of the problem, sabi dito, to be paid by Anna if she borrowed 1,600 pesos. Oh, so, that means si Anna is going to borrow 1,600 pesos. And again, borrowed money here is going to be our principal or initial amount. So therefore, it's going to be our P. And then, if we go to the next value, that is 6 and 1/4%. So again, yung meron lang SI unit in percentage form is going to be our rate. So therefore, this is automatically our rate. And then, another value that we have on the problem is 7 months. So months is an SI unit for time. So therefore, this is going to be our T. So if we write it down, yung P natin is 1,600 pesos. Sorry about that one. That was in 600 pesos. And then our rate is 6 and 1/4%. And then our time is 7 months. And again, we have a strict requirement for our rate and time. Okay lang tayo sa ating principal kasi it's in pesos or any currency could work. But for our R, it has to be expressed in decimal form. So we have to express 6 and 1/4 in decimal form. So we have to arrive to each decimal equivalent. So for this case, yung value that we could have here in fractional form first is going to be 4. 6 times 4 is going to be 24 plus 1 is going to be 25. So we could have 25 divided by 4 or we could also have 6 tapos kukunin natin yung 1/4 niya. So tingnan natin. So yung 1 divided by 4 is just 0.25. So we could also do 6.25. So that's another technique. Pwedeng kunin lang natin yung value ng fractional form. We know that this is a whole number. So we could just add it doon sa ating whole number, yung ating value that we get from our fractional value right here, which is 1/4. And then we could also do this one na ano siya, improper. So 25 divided by 4 is going to be 6.25 as well. So yung technique doon is that we are just going to multiply our denominator with the whole number and then add the value doon sa ating numerator and copy of course the denominator. So if we do that, 4 and then 4 times 6 is going to be 24 plus 1 is 25 and then 25 divided by 4 is still going to be um, 6.25%. 6.25. So we could do that. So ito yung ating interest, 6.25%. And then from 6.25, of course, this is still in percentage form. We could divide this now with 100. So if we divide this with 100, yung 6.25 natin, we could get now our decimal equivalent. So yung 6.25 uh, would be divided by 100. And then that is going to be 0.0625. So that's a value that we are going to use dun sa ating problem. And then for 7 months, we have to arrive 2 years. So we know that 1 year is going to be equal to 12 months. So we are going to convert this one by multiplying yung conversion form niya. So we wanna arrive in years, so therefore kailangan yung makakancel out is in months. So therefore, yung month should be on the denominator. And then our years should be on the numerator. So it's going to be 1 year over 12 months that we multiplied with 7 months. And then we can cancel out the SI unit na months, and then we could get 7 over 12 years. And then, what's the value nung 7 divided by 12? That would be our value expressed in years. So as you can see, we have 0.58333. This is a non-terminating decimal. So we could just settle for 4 decimal places. That would work. But if you have a calculator that would allow everything to be used, then that would be good because you would get the exact value. But for this case, we could try to use up until 4 decimal places. We could have 0.5833. So 0.5833 years. Yan. So, are we good now with our SI units for our R and T? So, yung R natin is already expressed in decimal form, and then our time now is expressed in years. So, we could move on to the next value na kukunin natin, which is yung required. So, ano yung required doon sa problem? So, yung required doon sa problem is to determine the simple interest. So, therefore, we are finding for our I. So, I yung nawawala. And then, for the formula that we are going to use, of course, we are going to use I is equal to PRT. So, I is equal to PRT would give us directly our simple interest. And then, we do the computation now. So, if we do the computation, that would be I is equal to P, of course, we have 1,600. And then our R, which is 0.0625, and then our time, which is 0.5833. But we could use 7 over 12, by the way, for that case as well. But for this case, let's try to do na lang yung 0.5833 since nandito naman tayo. So you could check that one as an assignment, no? As an exercise. 1,600, anyways, or 1,600 times 0.0625 times 0.5833 is going to give us 58.33. So therefore, we would get 58.33 as our interest or simple interest for this problem. So if you are going to answer the problem now, you could say therefore, so that would be therefore the interest is paid by Anna is 58.33 pesos. So, napakaliit lamang nung interest ni Ana. Kasi nga, yung interest niya is just 0.0625 from borrowed money, which is 1,600, and that is just under 7 months. So, maliit kasi yung niya, yung rate of interest. So, therefore, it's going to be just 58.33. So, that's another example under interest. Moving on, let's try to do another example. Let's say another problem, example 3. At what rate of interest did Mercy invest the amount of 23,500 for it to earn a simple interest of 3,525 pesos for 3 years? And again, following the flow, we are going to determine what is given on the problem. So we are going to determine what values are this. So yung pinaka-first na value there is 23,500. So, sabi dito, Mercy invest the amount of 23,500. So, therefore, this is going to be our principal. Kasi again, sa definition, it's not only limited to just borrowing money, it could be a money that is invested for a principal, for an initial amount. And then, also, another thing that was given on the problem is the simple interest of 3,525. So, obviously, this is going to be our I. Kasi nga, siya yung simple interest. And then, we also have 3 years here. Of course, as a unit is in years, obviously this is our time. And then, if we go back to the first statement of the first phrase of the problem, sabi dito is at what rate of interest. So therefore, this is going to be our unknown value, which is r. So if you write down, yung p there is going to be 23,500, and then our interest is 3,525, and then our time is 3 years. And then for our required, of course, that is the missing value dun sa ating problem, that is going to be r. And then we are going to determine the formula that we could use to properly compute for the missing value. So yung formula there would be you could use I is equal to PRT, but if you wanna use yung formula na naka-isolate yung R, wherein we could directly find the R. From that case, we could just divide both sides ng ating formula ng PT to isolate R, which is the value that we are looking for. So therefore, from this formula, we could have yung R is equal to I divided by PT. So this is going to be the formula that we are going to use, and then do the computation, of course. So if we do the computation, now it's going to be I is equal to P, R is equal to I divided by PT. R is equal to I divided by PT. And then, yung I there is 3,525. And then, yung P is going to be 23,500. Tsaka, yung ating time is 3. So, we could do that. And then, of course, we do those in parentheses first. So, we could do yung numerator muna. So, ilan yung 23,500 divided by 3? So, 23,500 times 3, is 70,500. 70, so let me write that down. So, it will be 70,500. And then, 3,525 divided by 70,500 is how much? So it's going to be 0.05. So basically, this is actually the value that we are looking for, which is going to be the rate of interest. But we wanted our rate of interest to be in percentage form. So if we are trying to get the value in decimal form by dividing it by 100, now we are going to multiply it by 100, or do the vice versa to get its percentage form. So if we have 0.05, we could just multiply this by 100%, and we could get yung percentage form ng rate of interest na to. So if we do that, 0.05 times 100 is going to be 5. So therefore, it's going to be 5%. So if we are going to answer the problem again, at what rate of interest did Mercy invest the money? You would say the rate of interest of Mercy of the of Mercy's borrowed money, invested, not borrowed, invested money is 5%. So, it doesn't matter naman how you state yung ating conclusion, as long as understandable siya. Of course, in English. So, the rate of interest, for me, the rate of interest of Mercy's invested money is going to be 5% if I'm going to answer the problem. Or I'm going to make a conclusion out of the problem. So anyways, that's example 3. So for this case, we are finding for the rate of interest. So yung kanina, we're just trying to find yung simple interest. Now, we have an example wherein we are finding for the rate of interest. How about yung example 4 naman? So sa example 4, let's say, how much was borrowed by Miss Becky if the interest she paid after 3 months at 12.5% simple interest is 3,000. So again, we are going to do the same thing. We are going to identify what is given on the problem. So, yung value that we have first as a given is 3 months. So, obviously, this is going to be time because, again, SI unit na months is for time. And then for 12.5%, that is going to be the rate, obviously, kasi naka-percentage form siya. And then, simple interest is 3,000. So, basically, this is our simple interest. So, therefore, that's our I. So, let me just write down these values, no? Yung T natin is 3 months. Yung R natin is 12.5%. And then, yung interest natin is 3,000 pesos. So, again, um, let us try to see kung naka-convert na sila sa proper na SI unit that we could use or proper form that we could use para sa ating formula. So, if we go to our time, first, yung 3 months, hindi natin pwedeng i-allow na 3 months siya. So, we have to convert this in years. So, again, we want to arrive with the value in years. So, we are going to multiply yung ating 3 months with 1 year over 12 months para ma-cancel out yung months, and then it would just give us yung value in years. So 3 divided by 12 is how much? Yung 3 divided by 12 is going to be 0.25. So it's going to be 0.25 years. We're good with time. We move on now with our rate. So sa ating rate na 12.5%, we want to arrive to decimal form. So ang gagawin natin, yung 12.25 natin, i-divide natin siya ng 100. So yung 12.5, I mean 12.5, not 12.25, yung 12.5 divided by 100 is going to be 0.125. So that is 0.125 in decimal form for our rate of interest. Now, we're good with the SI units and forms of this values. Let's try to find now yung required. So sa required, um, in the problem, it was asked how much was borrowed by Miss Becky. So how much was borrowed is telling us that we are trying to find for the principal. So therefore, P here is the missing value. And again, we tried to find a formula that we could use in order to find yung principal. So for this case, we have I is equal to PRT. If we want to make sure that we arrive at the value of P only, we could divide both sides by P. So I mean, not by P, by RT, so that we could isolate P. So if we do this, it will give us P is equal to I divided by RT. So this is going to be the formula that we are going to use, and then we could head on to its computation. So if we do the computation, we are going to make use of that formula that we equated. And then for I, that would be 3,000. Obviously, we substitute that value. And then, yung RT natin, yung R natin is 0.125. And then, yung T natin there is 0.25. Tapos, we could do the denominator first, no? We could do that. 0.125 times 0.25. So that is 0.03125. So 0.03125. 0.03125. 0.03125. And then um, we divide 3,000 by 0.03125. 0.03125, and then we get 96,000 pesos. So therefore, the principal amount is 96,000 pesos. So you could say that the borrowed money or the initial amount borrowed is 96,000. So if you answer the problem, of course, there's a context in the problem. You could say Miss Becky borrowed, therefore, so kailangan, therefore, hence, you could use that. Therefore, um, Miss Becky borrowed 96, an amount of 96,000 pesos. So you could make use of that conclusion. You could say, therefore, Miss Becky borrowed 96,000 pesos. Okay. So, anyways, that's another problem. For this case, we try to find now the principal. So, kanina, yung rate of interest, tapos yung previous one is yung interest itself. So, now, we move on to another problem. So, ano naman yung other problem? Let's say yung other problem naman is ito, for example, 5. How long should Dwayne invest the amount of 90,000 pesos of 4,500 at 7.5% simple interest? So again, we try to find the given values. So we could make use of this first value, which is 90,000 pesos. So ano yung 90,000 pesos dito? So Dwayne invest the amount of 90,000 pesos. So that means this is going to be our principal amount. Because again, per definition. And then for 4,500 pesos there, um, that would be going to be our interest. So, aside from our, what I call that one, yung ating principal, another value that we could have in pesos is going to be our interest. And then, which is 4,500. And then we also have 7.5% here. Of course, the SI unit is in percent, so therefore this is going to be our rate of interest. And then, let me just write down those values for the given. So P there is 90,000 pesos. So 90,000 pesos. And then interest is going to be 4,500 pesos. And then our rate of interest is 7.5%. And then let's try to see if these values are of the form that we could use na pwede siya sa formula. So in this case, yung R natin is in percentage form. So we have to convert these value first into decimal form. So you could say 7.5 to kasi nga yung 1 half is 0.5. So 7.5%. And then if you wanna convert it in decimal form, you could just divide it by 100. So 7.5 divided by 100 is how much? So without looking at the calculator, 7.5 divided by 100, ilang decimal value yan, you move to that, ilang zero yan, that is dalawa. So, dalawang movement ka from our decimal point. So, if you have 7.5, that would be 1, 2. So, therefore, it's going to be 0.075. So, 0.075 yung ating decimal form ng 7.5%. And then, what is required? So, ano yung required sa problem? Yung required is going to be how long should Dwayne invest this money? So being how long, of course, that's going to be time. So, time is the missing value on this problem. And then, of course, we are going to move on now to our formula. So, ano yung proper formula that we could use for this problem? So, of course, we could make use of I is equal to P or T, and then we could equate the formula in which yung T na lang yung hahanapin natin. So, if we do that, we divide both sides by PR. And then, we could get T is equal to I divided by PR, which is the formula that we could use to find the time. And then we do the computation. We make use of the formula that is T is equal to I divided by PR. And then what is I there? I there is 4,500. And then PR is going to be 90,000 pesos times R, which is 0.075. So yan, 0.075. So we could have first yung values doon sa denominator. So mag 90,000 muna tayo times 0.075. Kung amot at bubuhaton 90,000 times 0.075, 0.075, it would give us 6,750. So, yung value natin, ito't makukuha, 6,750. And then, 4,500 divided by 6,750 is 0.66667. So, basically, um, um, maraming values after the decimal point. So we could just round this off. Let's say ano na lang, 0.67 na lang. Or we could have 0.667 if that could work. So let's have 0.667. So 0.667 na lang. And then this is going to be our time. But again, 0.667 in this would be in years. 0.667 years. But we can also express this in months. So, kung i-express natin in months, what we are going to do is, kanina, diba, we tried to multiply it in uh, with months with the conversion formula. So, yung goal natin is to express it in years. Now, yung goal natin is to express it in months. So, therefore, yung conversion formula now would be um, magiging reciprocal yung i-multiply natin. So, instead of having years on the numerator, yung years natin would be on our denominator. So, 1 year would be here so that it could be cancelled out, and then 12 months would be on our numerator. So, it would be now cancel out, and then 0.667 times 12 is how much? So, 0.667 times 12 is 8.004. So 8.004 months. So this is telling us that it was roughly 8 months. Let's say or 8 months. So yung time or how long should Dwayne invest the money to have an amount of, or I mean to have a simple interest of 4,500 para tumubo yung 90,000 niya ng 4,500 it with a rate of 7.5%. It has to be invested within 8 months or 0.667 years. So you could say Dwayne should should um, invest the money uh, in 0.667 years. You could use that, or pwede hiya there is 0.667 years. You could say or 8 months uh, to have an amount of to have a simple interest of 4,500 pesos. So, i-complete na lang nyo yung yung statement. Anyways, nag-log na siya. And then, Yan. Anyways, that's another problem that we could have under simple interest. Tapos, we have the last problem. I hope hindi siya mag-log because it's almost an hour. Hindi pa siya almost an hour, but 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, isang hour na siya. So, that's why nag-log na. And then, let's have the next example or the last example. So, yung last example is this. Example 6, how much final amount would Miss Edna receive if she invests 75,000 for 3 years at 7 and 3/4 simple interest. So uh, we are going to try to find the given first or make use of the given. So yung given there is 75,000 pesos. So based on the context of the problem, Miss Edna she invests 75,000. So basically this is our principal. And then 3 years here is going to be the time. Because that's the SI unit for time. And then yung 7 and 3/4% obviously is our rate. And then we are going to write this down. P is 75,000 pesos. Um, T is 3 years. And then R is 7 and 3/4%. So, if you look at the forms of these values, okay naman si principal, okay naman si time, yung R na lang natin. Kasi kailangan naka-decimal form. So, 3 divided by 4 is how much? Yung 3 divided by 4 is 0.75. So, this is telling us that this is 7.75%. And then, if we wanna make use of this one, na naka-decimal form, 7.75 divided by 100 is how much? 7.75 divided by 100 is 0.0775. So 0.0775 yung ating value for R. And again, we could make use of the technique on how many zeros are there. So yung dalawang zero, so we move to the left dalawang time. So as you can see, we could have 0.0775 to get the rate in decimal form. And then for the required, natin, per the problem, you are finding for the final amount. So basically, yung final amount natin is F, or the future or the maturity value. And again, what formula could you use to calculate for the value nung ating hinahanap sa problem? So formula, we could make use of two formulas. We could have either yung F is equal to P plus I, wherein yung interest should be given on the problem. But for this case, pwede naman nating hanapin yung interest niya. And then, or you could have yung expanded form niya, wherein you could just directly make use of this one to find yung kanyang future value by making use of our principal rate and time. So let's try to do both. Let's try to do first yung F is equal to P plus I. And again, sa F is equal to P plus I, yung limitation niya is that we have to find your interest first. And again, yung interest, madali lang naman kasi yung interest is just I is equal to PRT. And these values are given in the problem. So, yung P natin there is 75,000 pesos times R, which is 3, and then times the time, which is 0.775. So, we could try to find the I. So, 75,000 pesos times 3 times 0.0775 times 0.0775. So, how much is that? So, that is 17,437.5. So, yung interest natin is 17,437.5 pesos. And then, this is not yet a final amount. Because again, yung final amount natin is the sum of the principal with the interest. So, we are going to add this value with the interest. So, F is equal to P plus I. So, yung principal amount natin is 75. So, 75,000 pesos plus 17,437.5. So, plus 75,000. So how much is that? That is 92,437.5. So 92,437.5 pesos. So meaning, yung final amount for the invested money of Miss Edna is 92,437.5. So kasama na yun yung ano, yung interest tsaka yung ano niya, yung principal. And then if we try to make use of the other formula, we could also do that. So if we try to make use of the other formula, that would be for this case, it would be F is equal to P times 1 plus RT. And then, ano yung P there? Yung P again is 75,000. Tapos, 1 plus yung R mo, which is 0.0775 times T. Ano yung T mo there? Yung T there is 3. So, yan. And then, 75,000, we do what is in the parentheses first. 0.0775 times 3 ka muna. 0.0775 times 3 is 0.2325. 0.2325 and then plus 1. So if we add 1, that is 1.2325. So we could do that. 1.2325 1.2325. Tapos, yung 1.2325, i-multiply mo siya sa 75,000. And then, as you can see, you get 92,437.5. 92,000, that is 92,437.5, which is basically the same value that you would get if you make use of these other formula. Kasi nga, yung basis ng formula na to is just from the same concept that we had for these other formula, and it's just basically an expanded form of the formula. So you could make use of that, both of that. Just properly use what is needed first to properly find the value. And then, for the conclusion, again, we are going to answer the problem. So you'd say the final amount that Miss Edna would receive is 92,437.5 pesos. So basically, that's going to be the amount that Miss Edna would receive after she invested 75,000 for 3 years at 7 and 3/4% simple interest. So yeah. So anyways, all of the problems were already answered, and I think all of the variables that we explained a while ago were made use doon sa ating mga examples. And for this case, I would like to end the session now for for simple interest kasi baka mag-ano siya mag-lag. And then I'll just create another video for I think for compound interest yung next na I mean simple discount pala yung other topic. And again, same case as other video discussions that I had for MMW, since hindi pwede tayong mag face-to-face session by the next week. Kindly answer na lang yung ating activity for simple interest, which is this one, yung sa ating activity 7. And kindly include na lang din itong table. Okay? So these are the activities that you are going to answer for this specific topic.